He goes right. It's a little bit. There you go. We're live, Chair.
Morning, welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for People. I'm Councillor William J. Rowley, the chairman of the committee. Today, a little bit of housekeeping. The Scrutiny Committee meeting is being live streamed on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Election Act Wales 2021, which will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply at all times, and members, I'm sure they will, should conduct themselves accordingly. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings will be provided upon request, and the images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the council. Thank you. Okay, item 1, apologies.
We've had apologies from Councillor Taylor, Chair.
Thank you, no further apologies. Item 2, declaration of interests. No. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I'm sure we will digest them. Do we have a mover?
Move it.
Seconder. Thank you, John. Okay, it takes us on to item 4, which is pupil attendance in schools, and you'll find this reports on pages 5 to 14. But before we do anything, we're going to hand over. The cabinet member wishes to say a few words.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to meet with you today to talk about what matters when we focus on our children in Newport. The imperative for all of us is that children in school, attendance matters. Importantly, children are safe in school, and this is where learning opportunities are readily available to raise aspiration and improve outcomes in order to ultimately find jobs and sustainable employment. Therefore, reducing exclusion from our school also matters. We understand the national trends and the concerns that we all share. It's important that schools are supported in sustaining consistent approaches to behaviour, and appropriate preventative measures are utilised, especially when we know some of our young people are particularly vulnerable to exploitation. Consequently, I'd like to use this opportunity to announce the launch of the Youth Endowment Fund. This is an education catalyst pilot programme specific to Newport, and the intention is to reduce youth violence and will run until at least March 2027. Newport has secured £75,000 to deliver a catalyst programme to pilot across all our 9 secondary schools, the Bridge Achievement Unit and our Aspire projects. The pilot programme focuses on reducing incidents of youth violence and supporting staff working in education settings to implement evidence-based strategies that prevent behaviour escalation, strengthen relationships and contribute to a whole school culture of safety and inclusion. The aim is to reduce exclusions, prevent youth and violence and strengthen relational, inclusive and evidence-informed practice in our schools. This is so important as nationally many cases of further exclusions from schools are linked to serious violence between learners, showing a need for earlier and more consistent intervention. We're concerned in some areas of Newport where there are higher levels of deprivation, we're seeing increased vulnerability to criminal exploitation, and that's a risk when pupils disengage or are excluded. Current good practice exists in Newport schools and education settings, but improving consistency of approach across the city has been identified as an area of development. The pilot programme will help to embed approaches systematically, rather than school by school on an individual basis. The intention is to coordinate work and support schools to implement research-based approaches in reducing youth violence and ensure alignment with local and national priorities. It will also provide additional professional learning for staff on trusted adult models, relational practice, pupil-staff wellbeing approaches and anti-racism and disproportionality. We will carry out good practice reviews in early settings to identify strengths, gaps and priorities for improvements. We'll strengthen multi-agency collaboration with youth service, police and third sector partners to support young people at risk. We'll improve data-informed early identification of pupils at risk of exclusion, poor attendance or involvement in violence, an overall reduction of exclusions and serious incidents related to violent conduct through early support for pupils and consistent relational practices, consistent behaviour management, inclusive approaches. We want a workforce with stronger skill sets in supporting pupils who are vulnerable to engage in violent behaviour and increase confidence in relationship-based practice, anti-racism coaches and inclusive support. Stronger partnership, working will ensure vulnerable learners do not fall between services and miss out on much needed support and in an appropriate time frame. Please be assured this work will continue beyond the pilot programme, and Newport will be positioned as a regional leader in evidence-informed practice and reducing youth violence, which will result in safer school environments. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Member, for that introduction. And I hope you feel satisfied now. Good.
It's a good start to the day.
It's a good start to the day, and rest assured we will be looking at that and scrutinising it. Although I wish there was more money than what you've announced, but anything to start, because it has enough. Anything that helps attendance and other issues is always welcome. Sarah, do you want to take us through the reports?
Well, what I would suggest to the committee, if this was acceptable to you, is you would have seen the reports in advance.
Yes.
You would have seen the data in relation to the rest of Wales. You would have seen strategies that we use for both exclusions and attendance. And today we've got here Becky Sims, who leads the portfolio for wellbeing and attendance, and Louise Morrow, who is our senior education welfare officer and supports all of the service for the local authority, and they're experts in attendance. And I can answer any questions then about attendance as well, but obviously my specialism will be linked into exclusions today. Would that be suitable, Chair?
That would be great. Who wants to lead off?
Or any questions to start?
Oh, we have loads of questions.
Would you like to go straight into that? Is that okay?
We could go straight into questions. Sometimes it's good to go back through the pages, because one of the members recently commented about the good thing about going through page by page. It gauges their minds on where they are, so they're not flip-flopping, but also then it adds as a reminder for them to ask their questions. And I think that's the way we're going to do it today.
Okay.
And we can stop and go, and any of the team, Sarah, can answer at any time.
Chair, would the committee benefit from us going through some of the key headlines on each page as officers, and then go into questions? We're happy to do it.
Yeah, please do that. Okay. So if you let us know what page we're going on, because they want to follow by us. So we're on page 9. So that's the beginning of our report, okay?
So begin with attendance, Chair?
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
So the report provided to the committee gives you a summary of attendance, strategies and performance for the academic year of 24 to 25, and then a position statement for the autumn term of 2025. So moving on to page 10, I believe, of your pack. This page summarises the support and challenge for schools from the local authority. So the Education Welfare Service offers universal, targeted and intensive levels of support through a tiered approach, and that's tailored to each school's need depending on their attendance figures over time. The Education Welfare Service works very effectively with schools to manage referrals and to offer support to pupils, families and staff. And there's a summary for you describing the size of the service, the number of posts and the number of caseloads that were held open during that academic year. In section 1.3, we've outlined for the committee some of the additional strategies which we implemented during last academic year. And some of the key points there for your attention would be the introduction of our 3-year Newport attendance strategy, which came with associated professional learning for school leaders and governors, and importantly, a self-evaluation tool for schools. to use. There was, in addition to that, the introduction of an online portal for some administrative processes, additional support offered for identified schools and for out-of-county providers, the introduction of a pilot model of partner schools. So where good practice and strong practice is recognised, those schools are partnered up to coach and support other Newport schools. The Education Welfare Service has worked in partnership with the Educational Psychology Service to implement the EBSA strategy, that's pupils who are presenting with emotionally based school avoidance. There is a virtual school pilot project being established by 3 secondary schools, and the description there just concludes with the partnership working that the Education Welfare Service has continued to develop. Are you happy, Chair, if I move on to the data?
Yes, I'm happy for that.
Thank you.
Just a second, a question coming through.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was on this 3-year plan that I wanted to talk about. That was why I interrupted. I do apologise. It looks like a good strategy going forward. I just wondered how the heads of schools and school staff and governors are accepting it, and the fact that it's a self-evaluation tool, and how are they dealing with that?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. We've had excellent engagement from school leaders in the professional learning workshops that were offered when we launched the attendance strategy. And in particular, it's useful for school staff at many layers. So it's useful for senior leaders such as head teachers, or those who might be the strategic lead for attendance in the school, all the way down to staff who are employed as family engagement officers. There's something in the strategy toolkit really for everyone. Nearly all schools took part in the professional learning, and my colleague Louise Moore, who's the Education Welfare Service Manager, very recently provided professional learning for governors and had a very good attendance rate, I believe, Louise.
We'd always like more when we're on training, but yes, governors have been very welcome, and I've also done a number of bespoke governor meetings as well around attendance for those schools who've got particular concerns. So the head teachers have contacted me direct to go in and actually speak to some governing bodies.
And in terms of the I'm so sorry, Councillor Davis, in terms of the self-evaluation toolkit, which you specifically referenced, we encourage all of our schools that are receiving higher levels of support. So where attendance is beginning to cause concern, a school would receive higher levels of support from the Education Welfare Service, and part of that would include an expectation that those schools would complete the self-evaluation toolkit. It's not statutory, but we would strongly encourage it. And we've seen a number of schools where performance is very strong also choosing to use the self-evaluation toolkit, because it gives leaders that opportunity to reflect on their practice, on their performance over time, and to learn from other partner schools where they may be able to introduce new initiatives.
I think one important thing for me around the strategy is that before, whilst we wrote it, we actually wrote it in partnership with a working group of head teachers. And then before we went out and did the professional learning with all the schools, we actually presented it to all primary and secondary head teachers so that everybody had a say in it and everyone could give their, we could consult with them as well.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Reynolds.
Thanks, Chair. My question was specifically about the data, but I think there was about to be an explanation of that. So I'm quite happy to wait until after the presentation and ask my question afterwards, if that's easier.
Yes, okay, that's fine. Anyone else? Okay, we'll proceed.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you.
In terms of attendance data, the local authority monitors data on a regular basis. So we would generate monthly data reports, which we collate and share with all head teachers. That is local and unverified data. But the reporting format is continually reflected upon, and that ongoing professional dialogue with school leaders informs the development and strengthening of that monthly report. Welsh Government then publish attendance of pupils in maintained schools at a local authority level on a fortnightly basis, and there is an annual release of an All Wales core data set for each school. and those will be introduced from 2022 to 2023. In the following section, we've included to begin the most current position of attendance in Newport as published by the Welsh Government up until the 2nd of January 2026, which just provides an overview for the committee of Newport's position compared with other local authorities across Wales. And as you can see from the report, Newport was placed second in Wales overall. In terms of school level data, in the secondary All Wales core data sets for the academic year 24-25, Newport's attendance is slightly above the national average, and the performance of learners who are eligible for free school meals compared with their peers who are not eligible for free school meals is slightly better than the national position. Again, at secondary, persistent absent rates are in line with those for the national average in Wales. In primary schools, Newport's attendance is again slightly above the national average, but in the case of primary, the gap in attendance for free school meal learners compared with non-free school meal learners is slightly less than the national position, and persistent absent rates for pupils in Newport are slightly above the national average. Would you like me to take questions on the data?
Yeah, we'll stop there. Okay, we're open to questions. Councillor Watkins.
Looking at the data in regards to primary schools and secondary schools, obviously the average for Wales in 24-25, 92.7 for primary and 89.1 for secondary, 24-25. Do we have any data in regards to authorities which are equivalent to Newport or round about the same demographic as Newport rather than Wales as well?
So, referring to the table on page 11 of your pack, Councillor Watkins, we've included all of the local authorities in Wales, and whilst we do look at Newport's position compared with the national average, you're absolutely right. When it comes to our own service self-evaluation, we will consider other local authorities that might be similar in terms of size of pupil population, but also in terms of context. So in terms of being a city local authority. So we would consider our performance compared with Cardiff, for example, and Bridgend and Swansea. But also we would look at those local authorities within our region, so the South East Wales region, because they're our nearest neighbours. In terms of the data that you've referred to, the All Wales core data set, it does only provide us with the national position compared with Newport, but throughout the year.
Do we have data for those other authorities which are similar to us?
Between broken down between primary and secondary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only for all pupils combined.
So on a regional basis, for the wide region, we do that as a voluntary option because it enables the 5 authorities then to be able to have good comparators, and on a national basis that's not available.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes. This is dreadfully hard. Can you read this?
It's Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, Councillor, yeah.
It is difficult.
It is. I mean, I need binoculars to read who's putting that thing down. Yeah, it's 3 miles away from the screen here. Councillor Davis, Jenkins as well.
I was just wondering whether there's a trend has been identified between lack of free school transport and low attendance for pupils. For example, in my ward, I get transport raised by a lot of parents. We're just under the threshold of, we're 2.9 miles and the threshold's 3 miles to school. And I know it's a 45-minute walk. And the route to the safe route to school is questionable. I just wondered whether there was any link with that.
It depends which, we can only make a link if we know the school.
So I'm talking about the journey from Commercial Road, so Pell, my ward, to John Frost School. I know with bus fares, I know it's £13, £75 a week per child, and so for a month that'd be £55. And if they've got multiple children in the same school, I know it's just extortionate. And I just wondered whether there was any link with low attendance.
I'll come in if that's okay. Thank you, Councillor. So because you've actually named the John Frost, I can actually say that the John Frost is one of the schools that's improved the most with their attendance out of our secondary schools. And I can also say, by working with the Education Welfare Officer within my team, a number of referrals we have to the Education Welfare Officer there aren't to do with transport.
Thank you.
Councillor Reynolds, Chair.
Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is about the data. I mean, look at the data. It is generally very encouraging, no doubt about that. Attendance rates appear to have been increasing in recent years, certainly in successive years. And the Newport figure, as it shows, is about 92%, and as you said, is slightly above the Welsh average. I was just wondering about looking slightly further afield, because when you look at English schools, their average attendance, you're looking at about more like 94%. When you look in Europe, you're talking about 95% plus. So just bearing that in mind, I'm just wondering, do we review, advise or share good practice from further afield than just in Wales? And if we do, could you give me some idea of what that looks like, please?
Whilst we don't do a lot of work closely with England, there is an All Wales group where everybody who's in my position and Welsh Government meet on a monthly basis, and issues that have come up, especially around the media, are discussed there, especially with some of the stronger ideas we may feel around attendance. So you probably noticed from in the report that in November 2024, Wales changed their persistent absenteeism from 80% to 90%. And that was to make it in line with actually being what England were already doing. So whereas I can't make any assurances that we're working very, very closely with England, there is those conversations going on within local government, and especially around ideas that perhaps other people would bring to that group with Welsh Government.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being too critical, because the figures are really encouraging, like I say. I just think it is important that we do get good practice and share good practice from as wide a field as we can, and not just limit ourselves to what's going on in Wales.
So the next thing that's just been released, and it was released just last Thursday, is that Wales are doing a review on all our attendance codes, and that is also to try and bring us in line with the English codes. So there is a document out at the moment. Like I said, it was only published last Thursday. We need to do some in-house consultation with that. We need to do some work with our schools. I've seen the proposals, and I've had a look at them, and some with anything when you look, Councillor, you think are a really good idea, some that you may not, but it is to make us more in line with the English codes as well. So they're two, within the Education Welfare Service and attendance, they're two actually very big changes, because I can assure you can appreciate all the schools changing different codes around for children and young people.
Yeah.
And we all know the difficulty, but obviously it made us be aware we could work with more children and young people when they actually raise the persistent absenteeism.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Can I just make a point as well about the English data? When you look at the average attendance in England, it is year to date. It's different when you look at the year to date from September to now. It can come across as quite high, because we haven't seen the rest of the academic year moving forward. If you look at the English attendance rates for last whole academic year, they're 1% lower. So you've got to be comparing like to like.
That's a fair comment. Thanks, Sarah. I hadn't actually realised that. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that.
Councillor Cleverly.
My question is about is there an increase in home education, and if so, how are they monitored?
Chair, most of all, home education is relevant to attendance or exclusions.
What it could be, and I'm going to give leeway here because it could be, and it's a great question, because it could be, how do we monitor? That's the question.
We do that. We do that.
Yeah.
So Louise will
And that's
talk about
nice to
that.
come in.
Does the scrutiny committee also remember that a few months ago we circulated a background page on
Yes,
elective
it did.
education
Yes, it did.
data, so that you could see the data.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But Louise, pass on to you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Just for that reassurance, in councillor, yes, they come within.
Sorry, can you speak up?
Sorry, yes, just that they come within the Education Welfare Service remit. So any child or young person who becomes electively home education, sits within the service,
Mhm.
so that they are monitored.
I was just wondering if that, adhered to the absentees as well, when they.
No, it doesn't, because they
Yeah.
form a different cohort of children and young
Yeah.
people. But you are right to say the numbers have increased.
And they've increased nationally.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, thank you. Since lockdown.
Yes, yeah.
Councillor Watkins,
I think Councillor Marshall wanted to be as well, Chair.
ask, Councillor Watkins do as well. Hang on to
Page
Councillor Marshall.
1.8 and page 12, 1.9. The primary all Wales core data set 24-25, we've got pupils' attendance is slightly above the national average. The gap in attendance for free school meal learners compared with non-free school meal learners are slightly less than national position. Persistent absence rates for pupils in Newport are slightly above the benchmark. So what are we actually doing to better those figures, should we say?
Thank you, councillor. So the next section in the report outlines very broadly some of the specific actions that we implement with schools in partnership to address persistent absenteeism. So it is an absolute priority for the Education Welfare Service and for all schools. And Louise has referred to the recent change in the threshold. So that persistent absenteeism was previously classified as pupils with under 80% attendance, but it's now any pupil with under 90% attendance. So the support that would be offered is a referral to the Education Welfare Service, meetings with parents to try and understand the barriers to attendance, where it's appropriate, referrals to other services, perhaps the Education Psychology Service or health partners, and that joint team working within the local authority so that we take a holistic view of that child. There will be a variety of pastoral support mechanisms available in all schools, and most schools will have an identified member of staff that will take responsibility for vulnerable groups. And pupils with persistent absence will often fall within that description of vulnerable groups. And then in a very small number of identified cases, where a pupil might also have additional support needs or additional learning needs, there may be an offer of an alternative education placement. So that would be on a case-by-case basis.
So those are the things which we're putting in place to improve those figures.
Yes.
To basically a better than the Welsh average.
Yes, and one of the requests from head teachers themselves actually in our monthly reporting format was that they asked Louise to work on the template so that there could be increased visibility of the data around persistent absenteeism so that all head teachers were more aware of the figures of persistent absence in their school and in their cluster.
They actually asked it to be split even further, so whereas we give every school can see all of the data across the city, and where it had persistent absenteeism next to each school name, because they said the numbers were so high because it was under 90%. From 2 months ago, we also look at 50% and under as well, because there obviously can be a massive discrepancy from somebody having a few days off and is starting to see a trend to somebody who's already entrenched in non-attendance.
Looking at those supports which you've got in place, which do you find is the most difficult?
Okay. Difficult for us as a service, or difficult for
as
the
a service to
Okay.
improve because of that particular thing, whether it's pastoral support or whether it's referrals to other services, which one is the most difficult?
I think, and without trying to not answer correctly or clearly, I think because they all dovetail so well into the referrals to the Education Welfare Service, I would really, really struggle to answer that, because I think that if I had a particular problem around something within that, it might be more within a particular school, which I would speak to the school and we would sort that out. If there was a big issue around any of those, Sarah and Becky would be involved and cabinet men would be involved. And so for me, they all work well. Sometimes they probably have their own flaws, but because we're talking about such individual cases with children and young people and families, it's very, very difficult to give broad answers because everybody is so unique.
One other question, Chair. With absenteeism of pupils, the schools and the data which you get from schools, how does that correlate with absenteeism of staff? Is there a big number of absenteeism with staff or sickness, whichever the case?
We don't ever look at that. We don't find those data sets necessary to matter, because the school has a statutory duty to replace the adult ratio to make sure this, because it's statutory for education to occur, that could impinge on pupil attendance.
Okay.
Councillor Marshall, thank you for waiting.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, everyone. So before COVID, we always sought for the average of about 94%, and I know obviously things have changed obviously since then. Just wondering, obviously, you know, when it's linked with primary schools, these are the children that have come through COVID, you know, the developmental stages and things like that there. Is there any noticeable trends for these young people moving forward in terms of understanding, will this be, you know, issues moving forward into high school and things like that there? But I suppose the other point is whether or not there's enough resources and things like that there. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't already, but what I'm saying is, in an ideal world, as we're trying to achieve a better percentage, we're never going to, you know, get the 100%. But do we have enough resource, enough staff, enough funding? In an ideal world, what would allow us to improve that yet further, just to understand what the limitations are, what the expectations are, and what type of things that we can maybe suggest or put forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a second. Just want them to get their minds together. There are multiple questions there, and feel free to answer when you're ready.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, Councillor Marshall. We, as an education service, absolutely aspire to regaining the attendance position that was held prior to COVID. In terms of primary pupils and the impact, I think that impact is seen nationally. So you'll see in the data included in the report that across Wales and for all local authorities, including Newport, we are making gains on attendance, but there is still work to do. So it's something that will remain a priority for us in the Education Directorate. In terms of resources, we're very fortunate to be able to make the best use of a combination of grant funding. So whilst there is the team of education welfare officers that we described earlier in the report, we complement that with further grant funding, both centrally in terms of community focused schools manager posts, but also for schools themselves. So where we receive community focused schools grants, enrichment grants, we always delegate more than 90% of that grant funding directly to school budgets so that they can increase their staffing resource to focus on attendance as a priority. I hope that answers all aspects of your question.
Thank you. Just one point about the, if we were looking for that, I said we're never going to hit that 100%, but if we were to aspire to gain in even more, what type of things would we need? Is it extra funding, extra resources, extra staff, just to kind of make us aware, or is it just a situation of it's complex issues surrounding family, main issues themselves? Just to understand the expectations of, are we putting everything that we can, you know, towards it, or in an ideal world, is there anything else that we can put down as challenges and things like that, so we can, you know, maybe seek that from further up or whatever have you and say it's a challenge and how to address it? Thank you.
In an ideal world, we would love to maintain the resource that we've got in terms of our strong education welfare service team. I think a key is absolutely maintaining those high expectations. So as a council, as governors, as school leaders, continually communicating to families that we have a high expectation for pupils to be attending school regularly and on time. And it's developing and further strengthening those partnerships so that we can offer those families that may be in complex circumstances a range of holistic support.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
One which is closely connected, Chair, in regards to item 1.11, in regards to additional support is offered, including additional EWOs. With the change of the EWS, I've noticed a number of training for things which have been cancelled. So is there any way that that could be possibly affected? Yes.
I don't believe any education welfare service training has been cancelled. I think there was.
Thinking about for governors.
No, I think mine went on, mine was last week.
There was recently, the ALM training for governors was postponed and rescheduled.
Yeah.
Education welfare training went ahead.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No, just one point, and I'm just directing this to anybody who cares to listen. And I know the cabinet member will listen and try and help you looking at that. Is that Councillor Jenkins raised a very good point regarding travel poverty. And travel poverty sounds in her area sounds quite prominent, so it's quite high, and that could have an effect. But also, there's nothing that I would expect you guys to do, because I don't think there's anything you can do unless you have squirreled away a pot of money that they could access, or that we could. So what I'm saying to them now, the cabinet member is listening attentively. I think that transport to school is another area that maybe we can make a recommendation at the end of this, that we should look to at least speak about, and at least look at and think about.
It's safer travel to. I think the issue is not as necessarily restricted. It's ensuring that we're confident that children have got safe routes to route to school, and I think that's the concern specifically for Councillor Jenkins. If children can walk safe to school and it's within the parameters of the defined guidelines where we cannot provide free transport, and it's within those distances, I think there's an imperative. I agree with you, and I also disagree with you, Dad, because from Commercial Road to the school that was mentioned, which was John Frost. No, it wasn't. Yeah, John Frost. Is 2.9 miles. It goes quite the safer travel route is quite a challenging route, so that doesn't work. Other pupils are finding the safer travel routes are not that safe these days. I think the whole thing needs to be looked at again, and I think that we need to be more to see what we can do. What we can, I don't know what we can do. I mean,
I was going to say, if it'd be helpful, I'll take it down as a note, and maybe
yes.
we can look at how we.
And we can just speak.
Routes to school actually doesn't actually sit within my portfolio either. It actually sits within my colleague's portfolio, element of responsibility and infrastructure.
But we all speak, and this is why anybody who cares to listen, which is what I said, but I know that they will listen. We can have a dialogue between us all.
Chair, if I
Yes.
might just jump in there, please. And Deb Jenkins is waiting to come back in. Deb mentioned it was 2.9 miles.
Yes.
Is that from the child's front door, or is that from a certain spot?
So from a lot of the children's front door is over 3 miles, but that wasn't entirely my point. A part of my point there was So some of these children are getting to school and they're soaking wet, and they've had to trench through puddles or where the ground is flooded. And after 45 minutes, so they go to school, they're soaking wet, they're freezing cold. How are they supposed to learn? There's no way that they can learn as much as they should be learning, because already they've had to fight through barriers, haven't they? It's another barrier, the same as well, yeah, it's poverty right from their front door to get into school. And I know I'm going on now, but it's not just transport, you know, child poverty. So they can go to school and they're not eating properly all day, you know. So it just be.
We are going really way outside the scrutiny committee's boundary. I think, Councillor Jenkins, you've actually made your point extremely well. We've taken it on board. I have. I know the committee has. I know the cabinet member has, and everybody else is waiting to see what happens next.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for raising that at the beginning. Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, on page 13, Chair, item 114, just the paragraph I'm looking at. Esting school inspections over the last academic year paint a positive picture. The majority of schools, in fact very few schools, had an Esting recommendation of attendance. So it's a positive in regards to the Esting.
There we go, and I think we'll end on that. We know there's more work to be done. All the questions on that section has been covered. There's no more from me and there's no more from them. So we move on now to page 15, which is school exclusions. If you could take us through that in the same way.
So the main report generally starts on page 20, where we give an overview of the support and challenge the local authority offers to schools. And this links into our expert staff, our teacher advisors, who are available to support schools with inclusion issues and behaviour issues. They run an expanded weekly helpline 5 days a week to make sure that they are available. That helpline can help to discuss challenging behaviours which might be quite unique, that perhaps a classroom practitioner hasn't seen before, but of course the wider team has the ability to reflect across the whole city and to give advice. It can also trigger a further support visit into school, which would be incredibly helpful as well. It also talks about the use of our harmful behaviour guidance, which invokes really the use of multi-agency support. Our multi-agency support in Newport is really strong and supports the prevention of exclusions. The Cabinet member has already talked about our really useful Youth Endowment Fund Catalyst pilot programme, and of course we know that there are only 2 local authorities of Wales that have been provided with this funding. And that looks at embedding the approach to evidence-based practice to prevent violence. And our secondary schools are also given annual performance targets, which might mean that we sit and dissect their data with them, looking at not just the national headlines and Newport's headlines, but we also look at the number of incidents that have happened in school, the types of themes that are emerging in schools and across the city, and how we can respond to those in the future. Naturally, we use the national data set. So what is very interesting about the exclusion data is that it's quite behind on a national basis by the time that it's verified. So actually, the latest data set is 2023 to 2024. And that's the verified published data, which gives the national comparators. Although what we do know is we look at our live data naturally within the city every half term. If you didn't look at the live data, of course, you wouldn't be able to prevent and support schools and pupils in the most appropriate way. As we move on to page 21, we then get to see the sets of data that have been published. what I would suggest is if you are looking at the data sets for up to 5 days and over 5 days, you look at those data sets collectively, because one does impact the other. So naturally, where you see the reduction and the small amount of data over 5 days, it has a knock-on effect to the data which is under 5 days. That is a consequence of that. It's the right consequence, because what we want to see is children, if they do have to go through fixed term exclusion, then it's at the minimal amount of days. So we're encouraging re-engagement of pupils. The data is extremely positive in the report. When you look at where we rank on a national basis, you'll see the data in the report compares to some of the cities. One of the questions that Councillor Watkins raised earlier around attendance, so we are comparing to Swansea and Cardiff, but also looking closely at Pupil as well. You'll see that we rank first in Wales, the best in Wales for over 5 days fixed term exclusions. That's not an accident, that is a strategic piece of work that's been completed in collaboration with our head teachers. We're really proud of that, particularly when you look at the data set, which shows that the sample size of Newport plus 5 days in 23-24 couldn't be disclosed because the sample was so tiny. We were praised in the recent local authority estimate report for the reduction and low level of exclusions over time. Page 22 looks at the breakdown of local data with primary and secondaries and more recent data. And page 23 then goes into looking at, again, some of those next steps with our collaborative behaviour strategy, which will be coming out very soon, and some of the estimate inspections, which is reassuring when we again look at any disproportionality that might be perceived to be linked to, for instance, global majority pupils. That is not evident in Newport's data set.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Reynolds.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, the first thing I want to do is just echo Sarah's comments about the data. I mean, as I was reading through it, it was quite stark how exceptionally good that data is for Newport. One part of it I just wanted to look at was the exclusion rates since COVID. Obviously nationally have risen quite sharply, and the Newport rate seems, to me anyway, to be significantly lower than the national average, which is great news. I'm just wondering, are you able to pinpoint any specific measures that were taken that were really, particularly effective in actually achieving that? Why were our exclusion rates so much lower than the national average? Have you got a particular, I was on about sharing good practice earlier from other areas. I think this is a case where we could probably share good practice with others, because that was superb results. I do have a second question to follow that, if that's okay, Chair, but I'll leave that one first.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I think the strengths have been the consistent use of manage move at secondaries, where if there has been an incident, young people have the ability to have a fresh start. That's supported the reduction or the minimalisation of permanent exclusions. Our secondary colleagues are superb at welcoming young people that have been through an episode into their schools. We do also track the process of the success of managed moves as well, because what we wouldn't want to see is young people shifted from school to school. So we are looking at successful managed moves and what could happen next, and more support that young person could be offered. It's certainly the multi-agency support with, for instance, the Youth Justice team. They've been absolutely incredible in working on a preventative basis with children in schools. We've worked with schools and the advisory team on a graduated response. So we look at positive behaviour, but where there may be sanctions, are they consistent across the city? Because that can help to make sure that young people feel that there is fairness and justice across, it doesn't matter where you live or which school you go to. That's been really helpful as well. A good example is the consistent use of mobile phone policies in our secondary schools. That's been helpful, so it doesn't matter where you go, actually they're all the same. So I'd say those are certainly the strengths, and just the sheer hard work and resilience and support of our classroom practitioners and our teaching assistants, who are just superb across the city. They've been really interested in the professional learning around trauma-informed schools and looking at and understanding adverse childhood experiences and how that can impact and show in children's behaviour and how they can understand and be suitably equipped to be understanding and supportive to those families and to those children. So I think we're very proud of our education workforce.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I mean, I'd certainly highlight I'll echo what you just said about the staff in schools. I mean, most of us are governors in schools, and we all see this on a regular basis. The commitment and just the levels that the staff actually care for the pupils they look after. We all see that on a regular basis. The other point I'm glad you raised was the multi-agency approach as well, because I think historically that's been a problem with information and data sitting in separate silos, but nobody talking to each other. And the fact that you've highlighted that is, I think that makes a massive, massive difference. Is it okay if I ask my second question, Chair?
Yes, carry on.
This is more of a general one, to be honest. I mean, I'm an ex-teacher, and over the years I've worked in a number of, in inverted commas, difficult schools around various parts of the UK. And one of the regular frustrations that I and my colleagues used to come across was the levels of just sheer disruption, threats, sometimes even violence that we'd have to endure in schools. And from our point of view, from a teacher's point of view, sometimes it seemed with little or no consequences. It was really morale sapping. Now, I'm not advocating, mass exclusions. I'm definitely not saying that. I've just said how good the data is. Certainly, but it's brilliant. And exclusions, I get that it does have to be used as a last resort. I just wonder if you could maybe just comment what you think about the balance, how the balance is being achieved between protecting teachers, giving them the tools to do their jobs effectively, with giving every pupil their maximum chance of succeeding. So I'd just be interested to hear what you think about that.
Naturally, I think it's important to strike that balance. I think we've got to have great respect for the education workforce. What we do, Councillor Reynolds, is we make sure that our staff are fully aware of, for instance, being able to complete the violence at worksheets so that we get an accurate report of what is happening in schools as well. Naturally, we want to be able to support young people and the complexities and vulnerabilities around young people, but our education workforce are equally as important, aren't they? We would expect, and our senior leadership teams in school would be operating an external exclusion type of scenario, so you wouldn't see the internal exclusions of when young people needed some time out of classrooms. That's part of a graduated response. You wouldn't see those figures within this report, but that would feel proportionate on occasions where there's been some of the episodes that you've described. And you would tend to find in our secondary schools specifically, and in our primaries actually, that there is a rota of senior leaders that are on duty with the ability for our teachers to be able to contact those members of staff if they needed to, if a pupil needed, if they needed extra support, so that a teacher didn't feel isolated in a classroom if they were going through a difficult and challenging experience. So yes, the balance is really important, isn't it, in terms of everybody, the disruption to everybody else in the class, the well-being of the member of staff, and also the proportionate response for the young person involved.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I mean, I will caveat my question with the fact that I have been out of the classroom for a good few years now. And again, as a governor, I think I've seen that the procedures and the policies in place nowadays, they do seem to be a lot more structured, a lot more effective than they were maybe in my day. But it's just nice to hear it out loud as well in a forum like this. So yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Marshall is doing a great job going.
Thanks very much, Chair. So my question is in relation, as a governor, I've noticed from reports that we've had, especially in primary schools, that's where I'm a governor, essentially there's a number of young students that don't seem to have, I would say, enough emotional resilience. So they sometimes do strike out, get violent and attack teachers and other pupils. I know there's the updated guidance of updated harmful behaviours guidance. I would ask on the side, can we be sent a copy? I couldn't quite find the link on there to be sent that. But just the understanding of, is this a current theme at the moment in terms of we're seeing across the board an increase? Because I've noticed an increase in terms of the number of reports that we hear about, but how are we looking to combat that amongst the statistics here, just to understand, you know, for their well-being, but also to ensure that we are, you know, doing the best that we can for all people involved. Thank you.
I think if you look at the most prevalent aspects of behavioural issues, you will find that they're generally around verbal abuse, verbal, you know, types of episodes. We don't have significant physical issues in the city that we're noting and responding to. There are, on occasions, individual children that have individual challenges because of their various needs. The ALN team work with practitioners and those children. It's not necessarily just about violence, it's about being frustrated, etc. And there are a number of ways to be able to support the individual's needs. Okay, so that can be through looking at the right provision for that child. That individual child might need some support with, it could be anger management, it could be some restorative practice work that they need to consider, it could be some social-based play work, it could be around supporting their environment. So there are lots of different ways to consider that. And so we're not noticing significant trends that are any different to any of the other colleagues that we talk to across Wales. So I can't say that there's something specific happening here, but what we do is we provide a very pupil-centred approach and a response to individual circumstances.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that answer. It's just more the fact, as noted, in the last couple of years, in the last 2-3 years, I've noticed a lot more reports and head teachers' reports, hence why the question. But it's positive to hear that there's also other things that I'm sure, obviously, with the multi-agency approaches and partnerships, that's also been addressed. So it's just to reassure us, essentially, that we are doing what we can, and especially in terms of this emotional resilience with young people, but also for the support for teachers, because it's not a nice place to be, you know, as you said, when they're on their own. And I know there's support out there as well, but at that moment in time, that second, you know, it can be quite, you know, just the fear or whatever, if you have it with chairs being thrown on, stuff like that there. So it's just to have that reassurance. Thank you.
Before I bring in Councillor Harvey, I'd just like to reiterate what was said. I think the authority here actually does a good job. I stop short of excellence because we can always improve. A good job on pupil-centred approach, which is a multifaceted way of looking at a specific behaviour. And it's such a complex issue these days. But I just think we're doing the best we can, and I think we're doing a grand job here. But you know, again, we mustn't take our foot off the pedal. Councillor Harvey, Mary-elect, please.
Thank you, Chair. Given that the primary schools are still increasing for their attendance, etc., and our secondary schools have got better, can't we replicate what we've done in the secondaries in the primaries? Because the Chair is quite correct. Children today are coming from very complex backgrounds, from very complex home lives. They've got one parent or sometimes no parent. They're being brought up by their grandparents. There's a lot of targeted issues, domestic violence being the biggest one at the moment that we're seeing. So what are we doing to protect these youngsters when we do get them through the door, and to make sure that everything is in place? And if we're working so well in the secondaries, which I can attest to, we are, my secondary school is doing excellent work, can that be replicated in the primaries?
You talk about attendance or exclusions, Councillor Harvey? Attendance.
Attendance, both, if you like, Sarah.
Yes, I think it absolutely is in primaries as well. It's I don't feel any difference in the confidence levels of primary schools. They are developing the community focused schools approach. They're wrapping around children to understand their individual issues. They're reaching out to families in a way that has been unprecedented in the decades of education. The types of police operations around understanding domestic abuse happen in primary schools as they do in secondary schools. I feel that there is equity between the practice in primaries and secondaries.
Right, so if our attendance is higher in the primary than it is the secondary, what are we doing to address it?
If it's higher in the primary and it's not in the secondary, I think you've got to go back to individual schools.
Yeah.
And what we would do is, there's a couple of different issues. First of all, we'd be asking the school to do their own self-evaluation with a self-evaluation tool. Where there's been unique situations where attendance hasn't been strong enough in particular secondary schools, we've put unique steps in place. So we've looked at year group by year group, what's going wrong. We've looked at the school's attendance practices. And what you can often find is that when you break down schools, we've got 9 secondary schools, there are occasions where their practice isn't consistent and there's more the school can do. So I think we've always got to remember when we're looking at the data collectively, there is also a story behind that data, isn't there? Because you've got 57 schools that sit behind it, 9 secondary schools and the 45 primary. And we've got to be cognizant that on occasions, the 57 aren't aligned. But our job is, because we support and challenge, we will go in and we will forensically look at what is working well so that the school can grow from that, but also what else they need to do. And as a governor, you'll probably hear if your school is got a significant issue and the attendance isn't where it should be, and we would know that because we would have looked through the benchmark quartiles. So a good example is if your school is in benchmark quartile 4 or 3, then we would know that that school is not performing well with schools of a similar context. And we will have, you can ask your head teacher what the local authority is doing to support and challenge your school. There will be a list of actions that will be there. And so we would know, for instance, which schools we don't feel are performing as strong as they could be. Sometimes it takes a school quite a long time to get up to that place. What we want to see is an incremental rise. One of the issues you might find that we would be concerned about, you would be concerned about as a governor, if that school is not making sustained progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know about it, and you'll be able to see it in your head teacher's report.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, well done. Yeah, it is nice to know that that is a partnership working towards trying to get the lag in attendance up. And great question anyway, is one I had. Beat me to it.
Sorry, Chair, I have to leave now because I'm going to be late if I don't go.
Yes, that's okay. You have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, Councillor Watkins? Oh, sorry, Councillor Davis first, and then yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of questions I've got. I mean, obviously, my first question, I don't want to know the school or the ins and outs, but I did notice in the report with regard to one incident where there were 6 exclusions. What I want to know with that is, what has been done to give our schools guidance to stop something like that happening again?
On that occasion, Councillor Davis, there was an incident which happened outside school on the way home from school. And I felt assured that the school had appropriate systems and processes in place within school to be able to, where it wouldn't have happened in school.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, can I ask another question, please, Chair? It's just a question now on managed moves. I want to know how successful they were, and how was the success defined?
So I haven't got the data with me at the moment around the success of managed move, but broadly speaking, it is highly successful. And the reason why you would have confidence in that is because our permanent exclusions are so low.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good indicator. But we do track managed moves, and we would count it as a success if that pupil remained in their next school for at least 2 terms and beyond. So we're not looking for just 2 terms, we're looking for beyond, so that we know that they're settled, reintegrated, attending school. They might have a couple of blips, that might be natural because they've got complex issues themselves that we're supporting, but they certainly are settled. But more importantly, we're looking and we're tracking those individual children where you can see immediately they're not settling, and we're looking at extra support we can wrap around that young person to make sure they have the best chance. If we look at that data and we know that perhaps the provision's not right for them, and it wouldn't be fair, would it, to put a young person in a place where they couldn't thrive. So we look at alternative provisions, alternative education under that circumstance, because we want them to be able to feel successful in education, to get the qualifications that they're able to, and they can lead a really prosperous life, and they are emotionally settled and happy. That's what's really important, isn't it, for them? So we're tracking them because they're individuals, but we do know that managed move is successful. Other local authorities across Wales are consistently asking us, how does managed move work? And we'll often support other local authorities in defining the process and giving them the protocols. But what you can't replicate is the excellent collaborative relationships that our secondary schools have got with each other. You can't reinvent that. It's a culture that emerges over a decade.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Yes, Chair, just a thought that's gone through my mind. We have an outside agency that is running an Aspire programme for our education department. Is the data, the exclusion data from the Aspire programme included into this?
No, so we commission the Aspire programme, and that's Report Live, and that's to prevent exclusions and to support young people with emotional and mental health issues. So they wouldn't have been excluded because it's preventing exclusions. But what we do collect from Report Live is the success of those young people's attendance. And we also track the success of their attainment. And Report Live consistently demonstrates that the young people excel in those qualifications, and we're really proud of that. And Report Live have done absolutely, they're such good partners.
That's what I wanted to know, that you will actually get the data.
Definitely. And we quality assure it on a regular basis.
And I'm in the fortunate position to meet some of those young people, and they find that space away from mainstream education it promotes attendance, they feel safe, they feel valued, they feel included, and they actually get the skills and qualifications they want. One of the wonderful things we get to see every year is their ERO, what's it, the ROA, let's get the acronym right, ROA, which we see our secondaries do. And it's amazing.
What's ROA?
Record of achievements. So you know when young people get, you know, and it's a very, very special day. And,
as long as you've got education, get
fully involved, fully involved.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair.
That's okay. Are there any other questions? There's no other questions. Thank you very much. You lot can stay. Scrutiny off to the next. And
Would you help me just run through what I've noted?
you can do that, yes.
Do you know what work we're going to do then?
Notes.
So I've made a note about Councillor Marshall's request for the harmful behaviour guidance to be circulated, about exploring the topic of safer travel to schools.
Yeah.
We can look at that in forward work programming meetings maybe, and just that committee are content with both the reports, unless there's anything anyone wants to add.
No, I don't believe so.
Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you very much today. Give me a second.
Have a nice day off.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye. You have me to just dive in. So if you look at the end reports, you'll be able to see that the actions, the outcomes are largely complete or ongoing actions. Those that are outstanding, chased and escalated now. Forward work programme, the regulated services report has been delayed just to make sure we'll be presented with a full year of information, not 10 months, 9 months. So that'll be just after the AGM. I've inquired about bringing April's items into the March meeting, just so we don't have to wait all the way till April, and it'll be clear of the pre-election period then as well. But yeah, that's all from me, Chair. Nice and short and sweet. If there's any questions or anything anyone wants to raise about it.
Isn't the 17th of March the next meeting?
Yes, 7th of March.
Okay. Okay, no further comments. Thank you for your attendance online and in person, as always. Nice to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Records made.